There are these fundamental questions about what we're good at, what we're meant to be. And I think those are hardwired into our factory settings. And what I was encouraged is like sit with those questions. And then when you identify what you're generically supposed to be doing, that creator, facilitator, whatever it is, then move due north in the general direction of your ambition. We put so much pressure on ourselves to sort of figure out and get to the ultimate destination where all we need to be doing is put ourselves on the journey, right? I am going to secure autonomy, and no matter what it takes for me to do. I burn the boats for freedom. And I find a lot of times when people don't know which direction they're going in, is they burn the boats for a tactic, not the goal.
Hey everybody, it's Tamara Thompson with Broadcast Your Authority, and I'm super excited for this next episode. We have Matt Higgins. He is one of the preeminent venture investors in next generation technology companies and beloved consumer brands. Created alongside Miami Dolphins owner Stephen Ross, RSE Ventures has built an expansive multi-billion-dollar investment portfolio with over 100 leading brands and unicorns across sports and entertainment, media, and marketing. So I'm super, super grateful for him to be here. He's been a guest shark reoccurring on Shark Tank several times, and he's had a great book, Burn the Boats, that also landed on Wall Street Journal bestseller list. So Matt, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate you.
Matt, thanks for having me. Appreciate the introduction.
Yeah, no, I wanted to actually just dive in first a little bit more about, can you tell me a little bit more about your backstory? I know not everybody on this panel knows like how you started from the ground up, just a short backstory. You've done so much in your lifetime, and I just applaud you with everything that you've done and where you've led. It's starting from a young age.
Thank you. I'm going to come every day, by the way, so you can hype me up. But the most important point of my backstory, at least that still resonates with me and drives me, is that I grew up in Queens, New York. I was a product of a single mom, and we grew up in abject poverty. I would say I lived in a Roach Motel. It was true, a small little garden apartment. And my mother was fiercely intelligent, but had a lot of different physical ailments, and that just compounded over time. So we had no health insurance and no money. And I used to sell, flowers on street corners, literally. Everyone's like, did you really sell flowers? I was like, I literally sell flowers, and was very good at it when I was 9 years old, 10 years old. And then I would work at McDonald's, scraping gum under tables. And so my early framework was being a caregiver, which grew as time went on, and dealing with poverty, and honestly dealing with apathy. As a little kid, when you have a parent who's disabled or struggling or an alcoholic or you're being abused, whatever the scenario, you want somebody to step in, and nobody stepped in, and that resentment began to compound. And I'll summarize, and we can get into it if you want to, but I came up with a radical hack, which eventually led to my book, which was if I could drop out of high school at 16 years old, I could get my GED. And with my GED, I could get a better paying job than scraping gum at McDonald's. That was the entire insight. And my entire being, in the moments of desperation in that little shoebox apartment, I would hold on to this crazy idea that no one else validated. It was like, I'm going to start college 2 years early, and I'm going to get that better paying job. And that is exactly what I did. I burned the boats and dropped out.
I love that. I know one of the main focuses on the discussion of your book is you discuss why having a plan B is actually hurting your plan A. Can you share a little bit more on that reasoning and how you came up with that?
Yeah, in the book, I'm appropriating a very bombastic phrase, which is sometimes like used by the right. It's very militaristic. The boats, like no escape route. The boats that I'm talking about are metaphorical ones about all the things that torment us, that haunt us, that cause us to question our full potential. And so when I say no plan B, it means fully commit to your potential. Those are just, sunny Instagram posts, right? How do you deconstruct what does it truly mean to commit to your potential when you are haunted by things? For me, my haunting was I didn't know which fork to use at the dinner table. I had no refinement, to be honest. I always felt like people could see right through me. Even going on Shark Tank, when I was sitting with Mark Cuban, I'm like, he knows he has a lot more zeros in his bank account. He can look right through me. There are these things that torment us. So I wanted to write a book using this phrase about what did it take for successful entrepreneurs to really get to where they there are. And so I tried to be shockingly vulnerable, sometimes cringy in my own book, but also bring forward stories from other people that I've worked with. Scarlett Johansson, who I work with on her business, and NFL coaches. Like, we all have something. And what I don't like about modern media culture and social media is we have this sort of arc. I went through something, I stumbled, and then now I've been redeemed, and I'm going to tell you how it all works. And the reality, that's not the truth. Humans, we make progress, we regress. That's what it means to be human. And so I tried to be human in my book and share, what does it really mean to burn those metaphorical boats?
I love that.
I want to say thank you for being human, or even showing that human side. But how do you even navigate the negative self-talk? It is a cycle. We're constantly healing. We're constantly rediscovering who we are. But how do you navigate that negative self-talk within yourself from your past experiences?
Yeah, and that's my point about my book and even this conversation. I don't want to act like I actually have it all figured out. I mean, I had a terrible night of sleep last night. I'm dealing with something. I feel like I'm in over my head. I was up half the night. Like, this is a work in progress, even though I wrote the book. But how do I deal with it? Let's talk about imposter syndrome, which I think most people can relate to, even if they don't acknowledge it. Like, when I was on the set of Shark Tank, and I just felt so overwhelmed by the experience. Like, how did this kid go from selling flowers on street corners to being alongside Mark Cuban and Kevin O'Leary? Like, clearly a mistake has been made. And not only that, I manifested it. So sometimes when you will something into existence, it actually compounds your sense of imposter syndrome, because you feels like it was manufactured. And I had this amazing moment with Damon, who's also from Queens. And I was telling him, like, man, I'm freaking out. And he's like, why? I was like, I don't know. I just feel like this is all, it isn't meant to be. I don't really belong here. And he goes, after cursing everyone else out, because we're from Queens, he goes, Matt, you belong here because you are here. And I would say it was almost like, Socrates came down from a couple thousand years ago to tell me the reality is there's no final arbiter of belonging. And I tell anybody listening to this, if you're waiting for somebody to invite you into the board table or to tell you that you belong here, it's never going to happen. You are the ultimate judge. And so I began to internalize that. And the second thought is, consider the alternative. If you don't feel imposter syndrome, it means you're probably settling for mediocrity and predictability. If you are feeling imposter syndrome, it means that you're putting your brain in new, uncomfortable situations where you have no neural pathways. And so it's a long way of saying that I have reframed my relationship with anxiety and imposter syndrome as a feedback loop. That's confirmation I'm doing new hard things. So even last night, when I felt ill-equipped to deal with what I'm dealing with right now, sleep deprived, I was like, you know what? I'd rather die like this than submitting to mediocrity and conformity.
Mike, you have an incredible story, and you've been through a lot. And I think there's an aspect of adversity where, necessity is the mother of invention. You kind of have to figure it out. But a lot of us want to figure out the thing that is going to, that we are meant to do, right? I actually had a wonderful conversation with my brother once about what mountain does one climb? And I'm curious, how do you know when it's time to go all in on a passion, on a project? And really not hold nothing back, because there, oftentimes imposter syndrome is about, am I in the right room? Am I doing the right thing right now?
Yeah, great question. I have the privilege of teaching at Harvard Business School, which is a crazy sentence, but I've been teaching there for 6 years, given where I came from. And you know what I was amazed by? The first year I did it, I would sit down with students. Now, coming from where I came from, and maybe you all can relate, if I see somebody going to Harvard Business School, I'd be like, you've made it. You've de-risked your entire life. You have nothing to worry about. And yet student after student had the same refrain of imposter syndrome, vulnerability, but also directionless. And what I found is they all would gravitate to, like, what job am I supposed to do? And they were bypassing the question of, what have I been put on this earth for? What is my destiny? Those existential questions. And so the coaching I always give to myself and to others is like, you need to go low to the ground, almost like you're listening for the train to come. You put your ear on the tracks so you could feel the vibrations and say, like, what context do I thrive in? Do I thrive in an environment where I have full autonomy and I can be an artist? Or do I prefer to be part of a team and take direction? Like, do I want to be a creator, or do I want to be an enabler, right? I work for somebody who is creating, or do I want to be the one to create? There are these fundamental questions about what we're good at, what we're meant to be. And I think those are hardwired into our factory settings. And what I was encouraged is like, sit with those questions. And then when you identify what you're generically supposed to be doing, that creator, facilitator, whatever it is, then move due north in the general direction of your ambition. We put so much pressure on ourselves to sort of figure out and get to the ultimate destination where all we need to be doing is put ourselves on the journey, right? I have, my career looks very meandering, but actually, if you zoom out, it all makes sense to me. I was connecting the dots that are only obvious in retrospect, something Steve Jobs once said in a commencement address, but that is the overall point. And so back to burning the boats. I always say you burn the boats for goals, really important goals that matter to you so fundamentally, not for tactics. When people burn the boats for tactics, they find themselves committing to sometimes things that just aren't working, but they're afraid to deviate because they feel like their dream dies. And applying to me, I burned the boats a long time ago for autonomy. I always felt powerless as a little kid, getting evicted, all these terrible things. And I was like, I am going to secure autonomy, and no matter what it takes for me to do. I burn the boats for freedom. And I find a lot of times when people don't know which direction they're going in, is they burn the boats for a tactic, not the goal.
No, it sounds like in order to do that, one has to cultivate a sense of inner awareness and do a lot of talking. And I think, I heard something about meditation. I mean, how important would you say that is in terms of being able to manifest all of these things in your book?
Yeah, self-awareness is key to everything. It's the greatest unlock entirely within our control. Meditation to me is the greatest gift I deny myself. And I'm always beating myself up. Like, that it's such a gift and it frees your mind up and makes you a better leader. And yet but I'm too busy today. I just don't have those 20 minutes. It's like, well, that's the point. But more importantly, asking yourself the critical questions is so important because we are subject to all these invisible forces that try to propel us in a certain direction. Some of them are positive and some of them are negative. Some of them are well-meaning. Mom and dad believe that, this would be good for you to be financially secure. So take a soul-crushing job as an accountant. And then some of them are insidious. The withholder that you're working for at a job who's trying to keep you destabilized by denying you praise and redistributing it to your colleague when it belongs to you. There are a lot of forces operating upon you. So if you don't know yourself, you're going to be buffeted like a cork floating in the ocean. And so the one thing I'm proud of that I do a lot is I face myself. Like, I look in the mirror and I audit my, decision making, what I got wrong, almost to an unhealthy degree. But I'm always willing to confront myself. And I think when you go down that journey, and I've seen this when leaders have been struggling and then they evolve, it's because the slight pivot they made was they looked within instead of without. They looked inside themselves for the answers instead of blaming other people. So to me, self-awareness is the greatest reason I'm probably sitting here talking to you more than any other attribute, is because I embrace it every day.
How do you make yourself indispensable? If it's in work, a career, leadership, how do you make yourself indispensable?
I love that question because I attribute a lot of my early success was to that little job at McDonald's, right? I was 13 years old and I'm working in the party room. I don't know if you guys remember party room, and in there, there was gum underneath the tables. And this was an embarrassing job because they have big windows at my McDonald's. So all my classmates would go through and they'd knock on the window and make fun of me.
I remember Ronald McDonald, like literally right, the big party room. I think I went there when I was like 5.
Yeah. The creepy Ronald McDonald thing, yes. Mushroom chairs,
and the Hamburglar, and yes, I remember.
Yeah, a little whack, but my job was to clean that room. And I remember, this is a true story. I remember at one point the manager gave me a job and said, you got to scrape the gum underneath the tables, because if a parent sits there and then their knee gets, gum on it and they have a big spider web, you've ruined the whole party. And I remember at first it's like so demeaning. I would be on my hands and knees and scrape the gum. And then I just decided to gamify it and said, like, you know what? I'm going to be the best damn gum scraper this McDonald's ever had. Nobody wants to do this job. But you know who that job was important to? The guy who owned the place. And when they changed the labor laws way back when, and you couldn't have a little 13-year-old scraping gum, he started paying me off the books in addition to my job. And it was when I realized, like, if you make yourself indispensable, the job you have now, you will get another job. And he promoted me eventually to a maintenance manager at McDonald's. And I think sometimes the problem with people, they think they're in a dead end job because maybe it's mundane. It's not the thing they would choose. And they don't realize that the path to their next job, to their dream, is to make yourself indispensable at the one you're doing right now. And I think anybody can make themselves indispensable at a job, even a job that you think is commoditized, low skill, like scraping gum, by doing it with gusto and doing it better than anybody would ever do it before. Now, at some point you want justice. You want to be recognized for that contribution. But I always say that increased responsibility is a leading indicator of future success, and compensation, remuneration, is a lagging indicator. In other words, make yourself indispensable, crush that job, do it, and then demand the compensation or the promotion or whatever else. So I think there isn't enough discussion around kill the job you got, not go ahead and demand that, but just because you watch some Instagram reels, you should be running the place.
Matt, you mentioned some stuff on autonomy. So a two-parted question. One, where were you at in your life that obviously this job was probably the foundation, but where were you at where that started to turn for you? And what were you able to do to create autonomy in your life in your earlier stages?
Such a great question. I think that if I'm going to isolate a turning point, so I come up with this radical plan, right? Drop out of high school. Now, when you're an edge case, I use this language around edge case. When you're an edge case, meaning the rules that generally work for most people don't work for you because of your situation or your wiring. I was an edge case because I'm taking care of a mom who is slowly dying in the room next door. I hate my life. I'm starting to feel destructive. Nothing. I work overnight at a deli. By that point, I was 16. I was working on Woodhaven Boulevard in Queens carrying a butterfly knife. Somebody get jumped. I'm not set up to go to English 101 the next day, right? And so, but I hid that from everybody. And so the officialdom, the people whose job it is to represent the system, teachers, guidance counselors, all thought this was the craziest plan. But in my mind, it made so much sense. Like, why would I spend 4 years in high school if I could do 2? And I'm pretty confident I could go to college and learn the rest and do it. And so the whole weight of the world was against that decision. And my burn the moats moment was deciding the only way Matt Higgins is going to go through with this crazy plan is if I give myself no choice. And the way to do that is to fail every single class. And he eventually moved me into the what I call the land of misfit toys. I was in a homeroom with kids with beepers, the drug dealers, future entrepreneurs. And there was me.
Future entrepreneurs love it.
But what was great, the pivot point, it's such a good question. The pivot moment was when they wrote me off, and they're like, we don't know what the hell is up with this kid, but we need to get him off our books, and transfer him to it's called auxiliary services for high school. It's like that way you don't show up as a dropout statistic. So the pivot moment came when I executed. I dropped out. I took my GED. I sat on the steps of Cardozo High School, smoked a butt, and thought man, that, the last thing my high school teacher said to me was, I'll see you at McDonald's, and I said to him, I've told this story before. It still makes me emotional. If you see me at McDonald's, it's because I own it. And I sat there and I was like, all right, that's a lot of hubris, but he's probably right. So when I showed up a year later, I was finishing my first year of college as a 16-year-old, then 17-year-old. And I went to my prom and I had almost a 3.5 GPA and I was on the debate team. And I saw the look that had gone from pity or disdain to begrudging respect on those same people who wished me goodbye. I thought, this is how the universe works. If you have a vision for your life, you need to be alone for a while on the bleeding edge. And one day they will come around to you and say, I knew you when. This really is true. And I don't blame them, by the way, because it was insane, right? And so I would say to anyone out there, if you have an inner voice that's telling you, this is right for me, ask yourself 2 things. If you're getting terrible feedback and the world is not ratifying your choice, have you really shared the fullness of your condition? No one knew that I was living in such squalor because I wore nice, back then it was Jordache jeans or whatever, Guess jeans. I tried to hide it. And then 2, if your idea is so radical and interesting, why would other people be able to understand it since the world has no evidence to support it? Because it's a new epiphany. It's not like lots of kids were dropping out taking GEDs and go to college at 16. So anyway, I draw all my inspiration from that one moment of the steps of Cardoza smoking a cigarette, and a year later at my prom, seeing everybody over again. I was like, I always say, the Gladiator. I love the Gladiator. I always felt like I was walking into Maximus, walking into the Coliseum. Like, how do you like them apples? Now I'm making people say shot.
Love.
The new Gladiator's coming out soon. Did you see that?
I know, that's why I cannot wait.
I can't
I've waited
wait.
my
I'm
whole
gonna be
life.
out the night it comes out.
Yeah, I cannot wait. But you know the scene, right? When he's like, he's looking up at him.
Yes.
Stab. Oh my.
That's right. It's a good moment. So Matt, talking about radical ideas. You are a venture investor with lots of tech companies. So you see right now technology is very, very powerful, and there's a lot of new aspects. I don't want to even say the buzzword. How can people leverage these assets now in order to achieve these dreams? What would you tell people who are looking to have the next radical idea?
I think it's a really exciting time. Again, it's so hard now. We have to stray into cliches, but the cliches, are AI powered and AI fueled. But I'm of a couple of minds at the same time. I think there's never been a better time to develop a cash flowing business using tools that cost almost nothing. And that is incredible. Like, if you want to create a chat bot for small businesses, and there's so many different ways to harness the power of AI, that you could do the equivalent of that. What back in the day was selling stuff on eBay, that you went to a garage, a sale, and you were able to flip it, right? Because there was that, arbitrage. This is the modern version of that side hustle. And that's incredible. On the flip side, so much of what we're seeing in technology reminds me of 1998, where you had all these .com businesses that at the end were not really businesses. They just had a .com at the end of it. Most of what I'm seeing around AI is a future commoditized function that will be absorbed into some behemoth product offering, and billions of dollars is going to be squandered and in the next recession. So I would say to anyone out there who's looking to make cash, this is an amazing time. And don't be intimidated, number one, and don't wait to be spoon fed. If the number one place you can learn how to go ahead and make money right now is Twitter, believe it or not, and ignore the vile, tenor of the content sometimes, and focus on the few experts who put together extraordinary AI threads. I mean, what you can learn from those threads and build a business is incredible. And I've written some content about it, but I have been doing more and more in my own time, experimenting about, how could I use AI to make money, just to see if that holds true.
Oh, I love that. Mo's an expert over there with AI. So.
I am not I'm a curious learner, and I love that Matt said
let me hear what you think. What's your take?
No, I think it's absolutely, in order to have these radical ideas, you have to play with this tech, and that's why I like what you said, Matt. It's just like, I'm experimenting with it, I'm playing with it, and there is, as you said, a bubble right now where everybody's talking about and investing billions of dollars, but really, it's going to come down. The radical ideas are going to come from experimenting and playing around with it, and seeing what people are doing and learning from each other, and then from that we'll get to the point where we can come up with radical ideas. So I love what you said. I love about that. It's about experimenting and really playing with these tools, because you can make a lot of cash.
I think you could relate to this emotion. Some days I feel a little bit like FOMO, like, how come I'm not writing more checks? Am I going to miss the wave? Why am I not in OpenAI? And then I take a step back and say, trust your instincts. You know how this is largely going to end. Just keep tinkering. I am the co-founder of one business, an AI business. I am backing another business in the music space. When I see something that I think is truly revolutionary that only AI could have enabled, then I get behind it. But believe it or not, I don't see that often. I see great tools to make us work better and smarter that are good cash flowing businesses. By the way, if anybody listening to this has a good AI cash flowing business and you want to get my attention, DM me on LinkedIn.
I love it. How do you cultivate leverageable assets? Like we're talking about, building, generating more wealth and things like that, and doing different opportunities. But I think a lot of people don't realize that they can start leveraging assets in different ways at this time. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, what's fun about writing a book, you get to make up words and language, about very ethereal concepts. It reminds me, I don't know if you ever took like sociology in college. There's all these kind of pseudoscientific words for concepts, and so I made up my own. Yeah. So I made up a few of my own. but to put language to two very important ideas. One is leverageable assets.
Mhm.
Those are the things that we do better, that we can then leverage to get permission to do the thing you really want to be doing in life. So back to the gun, the kid who was, scraping gum. That was a leverageable asset that I had the tenacity and the willingness to subject myself to ridicule to clean that gum better. It was my first inkling of a leverageable asset. Proprietary insights are things that we know and see that others don't because of the context in which we live, work, or play, or spend our time. And so to unpack that, sentence, how I knew to drop out of high school? My sweet mother, who was abused as a child, had a horrendous life and died, in abject and total pain. The greatest gift she gave to me was she had a GED. And she did it because she never even got to finish high school, and she was brilliant. And so I watched her get her GED and then go to Queens College and get like a 3.7 and do all these things. And that's when I was like, wait a second, what if I did what mom did by accident as a result of abuse? What if I did it on purpose? That was my proprietary insight that pulled forward my entire career by a couple of years. And the result of that proprietary insight combined with that leverageable asset of my tenacity enabled me to start college at 16. I went from making $3.75 an hour at McDonald's to, by the time I was 26, to the youngest press secretary in New York City history, making $100,000. I don't know what the CAGR of that is, but it's pretty great. So my point to anybody listening is like these two concepts, if you sort of sit with them and say, okay, what's a leverageable asset that I can use to create leverage to bring me closer to what I want to be doing, combined to what's a proprietary insight about how the world can work better? And what do I know that no one else knows? And how can I use that to create a business? I'm going to give you one more concrete example if we have a second, because I did a TV show called Business Hunters, right? And one of the pitches in the show was from a woman from the Bronx who had created an Airbnb business, and the Airbnb business targeted visiting nurses because they can do 30-day stints and they pay more. And I was like, wait, I didn't know that. Where'd you figure that out? She goes, well, I used to work a reception desk at I'm going to say it was the Holiday Inn, some hotel. And I would always see nurses all the time. And I'd ask, what's the setup? And I learned that they have a stipend, on and on. That was her proprietary insight. And she leveraged it to create a 5 Airbnb business that was cash flowing over $100,000 a year.
That's incredible. Yeah, no, I've actually seen some of those sites. Some family members are traveling nurses, and they utilize those sites because they have a sort of smaller contracts, but get paid more for their time, and then they get to travel wherever. They might go be a nurse in like Seattle for like 90 days, and then they get to go to Houston and things like that. So I've seen those be successful. So that's really great that you shared that story.
That's why I like that story is like it wasn't that she was already in the real estate business; she was a receptionist, or working the desk. And she put 2 and 2 together and decided to go for it. Right? So I think we tend to discount. I think because we don't have mentorship, or we sort of watch too many episodes of Shark Tank, we discount our proprietary insights, and we don't think they're big enough to build a life. And every single person out there in the world listening to this right now has a proprietary insight that they could turn into freedom, not necessarily a business, but a way to generate more income, more freedom.
I love that. And I know I could talk to you all day if I had the time. I appreciate your time. I know that you're big on LinkedIn. Where else can people connect with you? I know that you said that you do some mentorship sometimes, or looking for other opportunities. What's like the biggest thing that you're focused on right now, other than sharing more about your book?
Honestly, this again sounds kind of crazy, but I am working on a national defense company that I've been working on for 7 years, largely in stealth. Just came public 6 months ago, and it was born of the drone racing league, a sport. And I realized that the future of conflict, unfortunately, is around drones, and we need to be ready. Remember, I told you I was there on 9/11, and I see what happens when the United States is unprepared. And so I put my heart and soul into building this company that is small robotics, as the most versatile small robotics company on earth. I'm the majority owner of out of Alabama. And I spend a lot of time raising the alarm and also doing what I can to support that company to be in the best possible position to protect the country.
Oh, I love it. Does anybody have any final thoughts?
No, that's amazing. I mean, I really appreciate what you're doing, Matt. Also, as a tech kind of investor and looking into that stuff, and I absolutely am looking forward to reading your book. What is one big takeaway from the book that I can look forward to appreciating?
Oh, now you're putting me on the spot. Okay, I would say the most important takeaway is the joy of living is in the striving, and I think what makes us truly happy, which is a reason why marathon runners experience melancholy. With anybody, if you run a marathon, you know what I'm talking about. That feeling of melancholy after you finish the race, and you're like, "Why do I feel so empty?" And you realize, "Oh, it was the training that I sought, that I created." And so we need to be equipped with how do we create a life of perpetual pursuit that is not, torturous, that can almost become formulaic. So the biggest takeaway from my book, when you finish it, and almost on a more emotional level than even a psychological, intellectual level, you will feel inspired to live a life of perpetual growth in a way that feels safe and seen. I worked really hard to show a full range of the human condition. I have been inspired and moved and mentored by strong women in particular, and female entrepreneurs. So I made sure I highlighted them, but not in a way that was preachy. And so I believe, will see somebody in my book that you can meet them at an intersection where you are, and you will feel equipped to live a life of perpetual growth.
That's phenomenal. Your answer actually gave me shivers. I'm not even kidding. That is actually a phenomenal answer. I look forward to reading the book. You're
so nice.
Very inspiring.
Thank you.
Very inspiring.
I put my heart in. I killed myself. I bled down those pages, by the way. I have thousands of copies of the book. Anybody DMs me, they're in trouble. Send. My wife's like, "It's in Saudi Arabia. It's $50." I'm like, "But think about the yield."
The impact.
Literally, I have thousands of books. Like, I have lost my mind. But every time I get a DM from somebody, particularly, honestly, a woman, who says like, "Hey, I felt like you spoke to me," as a middle-aged white guy, to cross the balkanized divide of our society and to touch somebody makes me feel alive. So thank you for saying that about the book. It is probably one of the most important things I've ever done in my life.
I love it. Thank you so much, Matt, just for joining us today and sharing a little bit more of your backstory. And I was happy that I had the panel here today that didn't necessarily know all of your journey as well. And those that are actually watching the episode, definitely check out Burn the Boats, Your True Passion by Matt Higgins. And like he said, check him out, DM him and LinkedIn, and check out everything else that he's up to. Thank you again so much, Matt, for joining us today.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Take care. Thank you. And everyone watching this episode, be sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and we'll see you in the next episode.